All right,
technical
everyone. Welcome to the
things aside.
first, I guess, after show of the ALGS, specifically groups A and C, which happened. We're in Australia, so it's about 3 o'clock now, and we watched it at about 8 till 11 o'clock, maybe. So it's a couple hours after, but we've had time to talk
It
about
was
it
about,
and write notes,
yeah, it was
and
just under
we're
three
presenting it this.
hours. The stream was just under 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah,
guess before we jump into the after show, obviously we're a new channel, and a lot of you, this could be the first episode you listen to, or the first piece of content you take from us. So to give you a quick intro, we are Team Conversion,
yep.
and we are basically just fans of esports. We love the ALGS. We think it's the coolest esport ever. And we're
100%,
looking
no
to
damn remote.
potentially sign a team moving
One
forward, which
day.
is why I've gone Team Conversion. So this platform is literally just for us to build up a network and maybe earn a bit of money on the side, whatever, to sort of sign an esport team, because that's what we want to get into. But I mean, Rage, do you want to introduce yourself and get some fun facts?
Sure. Well, I go by Rage, I guess, or Jesse to
That's his
anyone
gamer
else.
tag.
That's the game attack from back in the day. Yeah, I mean, I have not much more to add. I mean, about me, I don't know. I love playing Apex, or at least I did. I don't play anymore, but I loved playing Apex ranked so much. I love the adrenaline rush, and it really got me into competitive Apex, where I damn near studied the game. I was watching scrims every day, for like 2-3 hours, however long they'd go for, and then I'd use the knowledge and stuff and bring it back to the ranked scene for me and Toby here to go ahead and do our best. And I'd say we did pretty well. And now that we don't play anymore, we're taking the chance to just dive into this whole content side of it and see, how we can go with this, because we're super passionate about it and would love to be involved in as many ways as possible. But yeah, that's all I got really.
I think
Up to
for
you.
us, there's a huge void of Apex content that seems to be missing. I go on
I
Instagram every
agree.
day. I rarely see any sort of Apex Legends content. You know,
Yeah.
even ALGS content is just non-existent on Instagram. I don't use TikTok, but I imagine it's very similar. Even on Spotify, we're going to be uploading all these to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's kind of the point of this show as well. Is if you're someone who
Yes.
works a 9 to 5 and you don't have time to, especially in time zones like Australia, where on Mondays if you work 9 to 5, you'll miss the Sunday afternoon games, supposedly in America. So this
Yeah.
is also a chance. If you don't have time, we're gonna break down each of the games and give you
Yeah.
sort
And
of what
we'll.
happened, what teams played well, what the
We'll
KPH was like, where the zones pulled, what comps teams are running. We're gonna give you all this information here. That's the point of these after shows, and we're
indeed.
bringing it to you as fans.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
we'll break down a lot of the things that we see and kind of
yeah,
explain a lot of meta choices and picks for those out there that don't exactly know all the little details, because we know all the little details, especially me, because I don't like not knowing anything about the game. Even since I stopped playing, I keep up with a lot of things pretty much.
yeah.
A little rusty at the moment, but getting back into it.
And I guess just to do a quick intro, because that's what we said we're gonna do to me. Yeah, my name's Toby. Played Apex for a couple years. I think I met Rage on a ranked squad, so that's
In a
kind of the
ranked
funny thing
match,
about this.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I was playing Wraith at the time, and you were playing Seer. But
Yeah,
I'm
back
a
in the steer
caustic main, a
days.
caustic Gibby main. Rage is
And
a
I'm a
Bangalore
Bangalore
main,
man.
so it's a nice combination there.
Yeah,
By the way, I'm
it
like a
can
frag and
work.
Gibby. I'm not like a sit in a building Gibby or sit in a building
Yeah,
caustic.
it's
I'm a frag and
crazy.
caustic and Gibby. Take
And
what you like for that information, but
I
yeah,
was also, I was very much Fragger IGL Bangalore,
yeah,
which as Bangalore makes a lot of sense, but I don't know. I took playing Bangalore too far sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. I had an obsession, and yeah, uh,
Yeah, but anyway,
great.
I know we both are sort of exploring this sort of new world. I'm I'm at uni, I do like film and TV, I'm in that media space. So I'm trying to use all these skills to sort of build this platform and community up. But yeah, I think we should jump in straight to game one, if you're happy with that.
Yep, I'm
Um,
happy with that.
yeah, so this was a very good day of Apex. There were a lot of really close games, a lot of
Oh
really
yeah,
nice zones to watch. I think we only had two zones that were very similar to each other, which
yeah,
was the
and that
Grow
was
Tower zones and Olympus. But I think a really good
yeah.
showcase of Apex Legends. If you're maybe like a casual viewer and you want to get into, the pro scene, these games are really good to watch. What are your overall thoughts like on the six games we watched today?
Honestly, the 6 games we watched today, I would say are definitely up there as some of the best games I've watched in general. They were just super action packed. The end games were quite good. The meta's very fun to watch. It's not like super like locked in meta where it's like very specific legends. There are some legends you can swap around and and it's still fine to have that. And I think that's definitely something that the game has needed instead of having really set metas. But I think that is such a big thing because of like now with the legend bans, they can't make just three legends the number one. So having a good mix of legends has come with the change of having legend bans, and I think that's very good for the health of Apex competitive scene for sure.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the legend bands really make teams think outside the box, have to play in different
Mm,
play styles, which, maybe isn't the best for the quality of games. We're not getting 20 squads in that final zone, because they're all playing Gibby and Caustic and sitting in their bubbles the entire time. But,
yeah,
the better teams are now winning, if that makes sense. It's much more
exactly.
who is the most overall skilled team rather than who can just sit in the bubble the longest. And I think,
Yeah.
now rotations, the POI draft, which is one of the best changes they made. Um, Obviously, like the old contests were really nice to watch and they're really fun on Twitter and stuff. It was super funny. But again, the POI draft adds an extra layer of skill that Apex really needed because obviously we're getting the same winners each year. So
Pretty much.
and you could argue that just because they were the best players at the time. You could also argue, no teams really wanted to contest them or there's so many arguments we don't really want to get into, but I just think that the overall health of the game is in really good hands now. There's just a couple things I think they should change in terms of the comp scene that they maybe could keep in like pubs, for example, such as like the Tridents. I think they're kind of
Mm.
annoying to watch. A
I
little
would
bit like when
definitely
you're watching
say
comp.
like it's in some ways I think they're okay for
Mm,
comp because it adds for different ways to rotate and it's not so
yeah,
chaotic obviously because if like three teams try and go through the same choke at the same time because they got there at the same time, it's just going to be an absolute clusterfuck. So I would say in some ways they're good, but I will say I do agree that sometimes it can be boring to watch or just kind of annoying because it's just, you know, so a lot of teams heavily rely on getting a POI with a car and then just, you know, using that to rotate.
I think that the car thing for me is obviously about that, for example, that really funny moment a couple of years ago where, Optic Gaming is about to win the LAN. They get the zone pull, but then Sweet jumps in and steals the car, for example, that they needed to rotate. That is like super funny and that like car race on the ocean. That's for example, it's great. But I think when I mean what the car like is now, it's the fact like they changed it so you can destroy it, but then it
Yeah.
like heals up, if that makes sense. So teams can just
Mm.
bubble the car and it heals up automatically. Whereas I preferred when either you couldn't blow it up or if you can't repair it, or maybe you have like repair stations around the map, like on the edges. If teams get
Mm.
stuck in zone, for example, but I just think right now the car, like yeah, it's fun in pubs to jump around with a firing squad, but in ranked, sorry, in comp, it's just a bit. It's like too much to think about as a viewer. That makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
think that's a good point.
Anyway, that's a spiel about the cars, but I think we should move on to game one.
100%. Let's do it.
So I've completely broken down this game. If you haven't watched it, so just listen in. The zone was an estate zone, and it pulled between that estate's POI and sort of the bridge leading to Fight Night. And this was a very entertaining game, not just because DKK won, but you don't get estates zones much. Even in scrims, I don't think all week we saw an estate zone. So
Yeah.
breath of fresh air. It was amazing to watch. Most teams played Alta, Crypto, and Caustic. However, there was two teams that played Vout, Gibby, Newcastle, and that was DKK and Medium Rare, which is MT's team. And it was very interesting because obviously everyone was running Alta, Crypto, Caustic. However, the team that came first and the team that came third ran Vout, Gibby, Newcastle. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think it's a good shakeup for the meta because, well, for one, Crypto, for instance, has never really been a meta character for the many years that he's been in the game until the most recent times when he's gotten like a lot of buffs and changes, and also to do with like all the upgrades you can now get with Legends, which obviously yes has been out for a while, but that definitely was something that made Crypto more of a playable character for the different things. I'd say Valkyrie is definitely a good pick for Olympus because there's it's quite a big map and there's a lot of high places, like high terrain marks that are hard to traverse around. And then obviously Gibby Newcastle's usually a good pick for Olympus considering there are a lot of open areas on those maps.
And what are your thoughts on like the Alta Crypto Caustic? Obviously, like
Ultra Crypto
95% of
Caustic,
the lobby was running
honestly,
that
I
those three
think that's
legends.
honestly quite good because you can use obviously Ultra TP. Like you can use Crypto Drone to scan a team, kind of get recon. If you think it's good to push, you can try and push up, and then Caustic obviously to lock down an Ultra TP. Obviously use Caustic and his ult in the fight. But obviously if the fight goes south, then you got that Ultra TP to get out. And with the Caustic barrels, you should be fine to reset. Because I doubt many teams will follow you back. And if they do, then you have the Caustic barrels to your advantage.
Yeah, I actually find it really interesting the fact that the team that came first and the team that came third, being the only two teams running the Vout giving Newcastle comp, did so well because that comp, it like it maybe not on a surface level view like counters Alta Crypto Caustic, but if you really think about it, if a Caustic throws a Caustic ult, you just pop your bubble, and the Caustic ult gets split off. With the Alta can't just walk into the Gibby bubble for free now because it's got that EMP thing around it. So you can sort of see how that comp just did so well against, the Alta Crypto Caustic comp, which is actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Because like, why don't more teams run the Newcastle Gibby and Valk? That's what I'm really interested in, and I'd love to hear like a pro player's perspective on it. But yeah, I think the Newcastle is very interesting. The fact that people are going for the Crypto over the Newcastle. I get Crypto is a very easy character for like the IGL to sit on, and just pretty much IGL his fraggers, who are the Ultra and Caustic, who are two very fragging legends. But still at Newcastle, like that wall, you can literally play any crevice on the map. You can play any rock if you use that Q and that wall perfectly. Yeah, your thoughts, bro?
I definitely think that Newcastle is pretty much just a must-have almost on every team for a lot of games, and especially specific maps, because it definitely makes playing those maps a lot better. But I'd also say it depends on the team. If the team is more of an aggressive team, I feel like they would naturally take the Crypto because, like with, for instance, the Crypto Caustic Ultra team, that can be a very aggressive team comp because they can get the free info on teams. They have the EMP, they have the Ultra TP to get back, and Caustic Gas to lock down a building and stuff, and also use Caustic ult and barrels in fights if they absolutely need to. So I think it's really dependent on the team. If it's more of an aggressive team, I would assume you would see that more a comp like that for sure. But if it's more of a like a more passive team or defensive based team or something, or maybe a team that's specifically playing for the win, not necessarily just KP, you would see a lot more Newcastle Gibby, for instance.
Well, that's what we thought saw out of Stallions for
Mm.
all three Olympus games. They were running three big characters. You know, they were running Newcastle, Gibby, Watson. I think all three games. Actually, no, sorry, the
I
last two
think they
games they ran
were.
that. But that just shows,
Mm.
like, if I have a look where they landed Rift, which is interesting because Rift is sort of an edge POI if it pulls, south, but it's a priority, POI if it pulls north. So I don't really know what they're thinking there. I think Stallions is a separate conversations on how they played. But yeah, I think we should move away from the comps now
Mm.
and talk about sort of the rankings from this first game. So obviously DKK came out on top. It was such a fun end zone. It was a three-way fight between NIP, um, Medium Rare, and DKK. So that yeah, the two Gibby Newcastle Valk teams versus the Caustic Crypto Alta team,
Mm.
and it was a very well planned fight from DKK. They made the two teams sort of collapse on each other before they made their move. What were your thoughts on how this final zone panned out?
Well, I think this final zone, for one, I just want to say it was an awesome fight between the three teams. I had the NIP POV up at the time, and while NIP rotated against the team who had the Caustic Altar, Gibby, right? Team comp. So with them, they swung that team and they managed to get two of them knocked, I believe. And then they managed to finish off the fight just as they did get two down, but that was while crossing the gap that they had to, which is where DKK came in with their wrap. They were able to watch NIP cross, and I think that was definitely an advantage they had in the final 3v3 fight. But yeah, NIP was able to take out the third place team. Which what team was that?
That was Medium Rare. So
Medium rare.
that's MT's
Okay.
team, and they actually Valk ulted first,
Mm.
and they landed on the eastern side of the zone, and that's when NIP wrapped them.
Yes. Well, I that fight was honestly a very good fight for NIP to take
Well,
because it
NIP nearly
more or less.
won.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
got
more or
very
less,
close to winning that game, and they're playing for second, which is super impressive.
it was their best chance of obviously yes getting either second or even just going for first place, which they almost did. They did knock two of the three players on DKK, but
But that's the Newcastle,
um,
bro. Like
that's
they
the
got an instant
Newcastle
reset
revives. They
with
got
the
the
regen as
reset.
well.
And because they lost, because NIP lost two players on the cross and during the fight with Medium Rare, it was just very difficult for NIP to win that when the revives came out. So I
I,
definitely think that NIP did very well for their position and the play they made, but it's just unlucky for them.
I thought it was a very poor Valk ult from Medium Rare, actually.
I didn't catch the Valkyrie.
Yeah, they did it
That
super
was
early, and it was sort
mm,
of either Valk ult or fight DKK, but I think Medium Rare probably could have just played for second there if they're thinking about points. Because obviously
yeah,
these two teams are coming out of the building. For reference, they were in the two estates buildings on the low grounds. It would have been better in high. Like, this is just hindsight, but to play for second, I've just taken them on in a 3v3 instead of Valculting up, into NIP who had a Kraber, for example, and one of them gets insta knocked, for example. So that's just
yeah,
something that I noticed. I think in hindsight, I think MT would have probably just called to wipe DKK. But yeah, it's tough when the zone's closing behind you and you got a team right next to you. Valcoding does seem like the clear option. But to look at the other rankings of this game, obviously DKK, NIP, Full XI had a good game. Unfortunately, they don't really do much after this. The next talking point though is probably JDG, which is Naughty and Shuby's team. along with Team Liquid, who Naughty's team had a very good day. They were fragging out, but Liquid's team, Team Liquid, sorry, they really went under the radar. I think today they finished in the top 10 pretty comfortably. They were always sort of in that mix, that top 10 mix every single game. So I think there's a lot of positives to look at for Zero and Panic. But yeah, any thoughts on those two teams, mate?
I definitely think they played decently well throughout the day as well in the games. I
Yeah,
think Team Liquid, they came in the top 10, I believe, didn't they?
yeah.
Overall for the day. So I definitely think they played very well. I wish we could have gotten their POV, but unfortunately, neither of them was none of them was streaming, so we couldn't get a POV on them today. But hopefully, on the next block, one of them will be streaming. But yeah, I definitely think that they all did pretty well. So
Well,
yeah,
one of the teams that I wanted to also just bring up quickly was Crazy Thieves.
yes,
Obviously, I'd say probably a poor day. I think Phony and stuff would agree with that, and Nice Wig and
certainly wasn't
stuff.
the best.
But I just sort of noticed the POI draft here. They spent their third pick on Olympus, and I think they only had one top 10 or something out of the three games. So that's, something for them to think about for the next draft they do. Is it worth spending that third round pick on Olympus?
Mm.
But yeah, that's just some extra comments. But yeah, overall, game one, DKK won, had 8 KP. And moving on to game two, who was banned? It was Alta, that's right. Alta got
Ultra
banned,
band, yeah.
which was expected. But yeah, moving on to game two, still in Olympus. This was a garden zone, and it was sort of to the buildings towards the tunnel, leading to what's it called? Energy Depot, the
Uh,
place we used to land when we played ranked. Red
well, it's
Room.
not called
Also,
Energy
they
Depot
changed it.
anymore.
Yeah, they
I
changed the
don't know what
bloody
it's
name.
called. No.
But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously Elite Esports won this game, which was huge. They're a team that I want to keep an eye on because they finished top 10 overall
Yeah, they did pretty
today.
well.
And they were always in the mix there. They were always, making top 15, top 12. I think they only had like one really poor game. So they're a team, an upcoming team that we really got to keep an eye on. But this is sort of
Mm.
when teams were really mixing up the team comps. The main one I found was, Cryptic Caustic, and then either a Wraith or a Maggie was being used. Obviously, the Maggie is there to counter
Yes.
all the Gibbies, which is really, I think there's a whole paradox with, ALGS where it's like obviously last game everyone was playing Alta, Caustic, Crypto, but then there was the teams that did well were playing Gibby, Newcastle, Valk. But then if teams were playing that comp, there'd be teams playing Maggie as well. So that's sort of the paradox with ALGS and why the legend bands are so good. But yeah, I
Yeah.
also found a lot of Catalyst getting played, and then obviously Watsons and Newcastles and Gibbies. There were more of those. But yeah, any thoughts on this game, mate? Just off the top of your head?
That was the Grow Towers game. Not
With
Grow Towers
ROC, I
Garden.
think got
Sorry.
wipes
Uh,
by
yeah.
Magnus's team.
ROC. They ended up pretty much just getting wiped out at the end, which was quite unfortunate to see because they were doing quite well actually, if I remember correctly, in that game. And overall for the day, ROC was doing pretty decent. I don't know if they made the top 10 or not, but they were overall doing pretty good. And it was sad to see him just get wiped out like that without really having much of a chance to fight in the match. But I think the game was quite entertaining. At one point during the match, we really thought Stallions had God Spot, but unfortunately, the zone just pulled the other side, and Stallions, unfortunately, died before they even got to make the
Mm.
rotate to the next zone. So, yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty decent game.
Yeah, there wasn't much to talk about this game. It was sort of just a really weird pullback. I think obviously Stallions were set up that it would pull more towards Clinic, but then also just pulled back to the tunnel. But yeah,
Mm.
obviously Elite Esports won the game. ROC had a good game. Revival finished third. NIP and JDG finished fourth and fifth. So that just shows their consistency. And then obviously Stallions, and they only got 3 KP, which is sort of an issue with their team. They had actually decent spots in zone, but because of their team comp, they were the one team that didn't run any movement. It was really
Mm.
hard for them to overextend to get kills. and also adjust when the zone would shape away from them. So that's just something I think they'll really think about moving forward. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot. This game was sort of just a really simple game. Teams sort of
Yeah.
did what they do in scrims. There wasn't anything crazy to really report on. Um, but yeah, any closing thoughts on this game?
No, pretty much the same. It was quite a simple game. There wasn't in like any insane moments that really, captured my attention, except for like, yeah, as I said, the very end of the game where RSC just, yeah, pretty much got wiped out immediately, which was unfortunate to see.
Yeah, I think something we can talk about as well is like the gun meta. Obviously,
Mm.
there was some stats at the end of the main broadcast where it was, I think 70% of the kills were by R9, and
Yeah,
then there was like,
R99 was the deadliest weapon,
and then the second one was the
apparently.
Hemlock, which obviously had that
Yeah.
new rework. So that's just something to note. Like if you're playing ranked or something and you want to just use the best loadout, Hemlock R9 is the way to go. But yeah, I think we should move on to game three, which was a clean game. Walk us through this one, lad.
Okay, game three. Let me just pull up my notes here. Go to game three tab as well. Okay, so in first place we had Oblivion, which they had honestly a little bit of a scare at the end of the match. It was I figured they were gonna lose to Stallions, except Stallions made a bit of a rough decision on their push and approach to try and take out Oblivion. But overall, I will say that Stallions had a very eventful game three. They did quite well. They did come in top four. They
Yeah,
were at fourth with 5 KP. And they even got a really clutch res thanks to and team fight win thanks to Skittle Cakes. And it was good to see them get a decent game in because for the
yep,
first 3 games they got really lucky on zone pulls and just didn't do too well.
yeah,
In second place, we had Source Gaming. I didn't really get to see much of their POV, unfortunately. But to all I know is they were playing in the middle grow tower and they got pushed out by zone, and that was when Oblivion was able to come in and just finish it off. Oblivion at the time was a duo for the win. They didn't have their third. I forget exactly which player was not there. I know they had Monsoon, but I wasn't sure who else. And again, I didn't see much on Thugget's POV, but they did come in third, which by this point they were performing quite well. Overall, Oblivion had 4 KP, Source Gaming had 10 KP, and Thugget's had 3 KP for the top 3. Stallions, as I said, did really good with Skittle Cake's clutch. I would also like to mention that RSC did really well. They almost died out quite early on an early rotate. They went from gardens and rotated wide around the edge of the map to get down into the underneath section of grow towers, and they lost a player in doing so. And they had a team. I can't quite remember which team, but
I
there
think
was a
that was
team pressuring them.
Elite Esports.
Okay, they
They're
had
playing the
Elite
underneath bit.
Esports pressuring them in the building massively with lots of grenades,
They
caustic
were playing
barrels and all
Caustic.
sorts,
Yeah,
Maggie Qs. They were playing Caustic Maggie C, if I remember correctly,
yeah,
and it was honestly a close call for them. They almost got wiped out there, but they ended up kind of picking that back up, and they did come in ninth, so they made the top 10. No KP, unfortunately for them, but they managed to live a lot longer than they initially were going to. And with this match, a lot of the legends I seen picked were Sia, Wraith, Castle, and Maggie. Honestly, I could definitely see a lot more Maggies, considering obviously Gibby with Bubble. Gibby was played a good handful of times. I think I did see more Newcastles than I did see Gibbies, which was interesting to see that people were starting to pick up more Newcastle there after the first 2 games. Wraith was also starting to be played a good handful, along with Valkyrie still, but We've seen, I think, majority of the POVs we had were playing Wraith, and I just want to get your opinion on that.
Just on the Wraith pick and it like or a character in general.
Just the four most seen legends. Maggie, Castle, Wraith, and Seer. Obviously, Wraith being quite an interesting
Yeah.
pick.
Well, I think Wraith with the new like rework on her portal that she gets like a force field around it is like huge. We didn't really get to see that that thing you like the force field used too much in the games today. But I think just having
Mm.
that comfort that if you get into the final zone and you need a Wraith portal around, you have that force field. But I think Wraith, you put your best fragger on Wraith, and they can just
Yeah,
really overextend. And with the new blue and purple perks that make your Q a lot, wind up a lot shorter. It's just in and out straight away.
mm.
It's pretty much like it's like Alta. She's literally like
Yeah.
Alta, and Alta's probably the best character in the game right now. So Wraith
I
isn't
I
too
would
far
certainly
behind.
say I would certainly say so. Yeah.
And obviously, a lot
But
of these pros have been around for ages, so playing Wraith for
yeah.
them is very easy.
Mm. Well, I wouldn't say there's too much more for game three. The ending of game three wasn't like super clustered or anything. It was just like the handful of teams: Stallions, Thuggets, Source Gaming, and
Yeah,
Oblivion. Which Source Gaming and Thuggets kind of took themselves out because they were stacked up on top of each other in the middle. Grow Tower, Oblivion was just sitting up top as a duo with Stallions pushing them. Unfortunately, on a bad push. Otherwise, it was probably going to be Stallions' game. But other than that, that's about it for game three with a crypto ban, I believe, right? In game three?
yeah,
No,
yeah.
Maggie ban, wasn't? I don't know. It's one of the two. Yeah, no, crypto ban, game three. My bad.
I think it was
Moving
Crypto then
on.
Maggie.
Yeah, it was crypto, then Maggie. So Maggie was banned in game four, which we're going to start talking about right now. So
So
in
Storm
first
Point
place,
now.
yes, this is the first game of Storm Point, and I will say the end game is quite eventful. In first place, we had Thuggets with 18.6 KP. In second place, we had DKK, 19 points with 10 KP. And in third place, we had JD Gaming, 15 points with 8 KP. But I would also like to mention that in fourth place, we had NIP with 14 points, 9 KP. NIP has been doing amazing recently, and especially in today's set. They did come first at top of the set. And I just wanted to make sure to mention them here because they were wiping out a lot of the lobby in game four, especially as the zones were closing. They just had everyone filter through to them, and they managed to wipe out everyone, including teams like Stallion, CRT. I'm pretty sure they took out as well. So some pretty heavy hitters they managed to walk through. In game four, I noticed a lot of Wraith still. I noticed a handful of Watsons still, Newcastle and Caustic. But we also had some Valkyrie picks, which I think is quite good. We have a couple movement characters there with Valk and Wraith. And obviously, Watson has kind of got introduced in this game, which I feel is a decent pick for Storm Point because there are some spots where you can, especially with the end game, which was trenches. So having Watson, I feel like, is good for the trenches, which that's North Pad, correct? Or
Yeah, it's just out the front.
North Pad, yeah. Trenches, which is just out the front of North Pad. Having Watson there and having the gen with the Newcastle wall, it allows you to really set up in the trench instead of, if there's no bunkers taken, which usually by the time the final teams start getting to that zone, the bunkers have been taken up. For instance, Stallions did set up in a corner and they had Watson gen, I believe Stallions had Watson. I could be wrong. No, they had a Valkyrie. My bad. Wrong team. Anyway, I just want to hear your thoughts on those legends. What do you think about the Watson pick, especially being introduced over, a character like Caustic, for instance, on this map?
I mean, as like a caustic player myself, and not that my ranked experience is any similar to ALGS, but I definitely find the buildings on Storm Point are a lot easier to hold as a Watson. And
Mm.
obviously, like for example, on World's Edge with Caustic, there's so many, rocks and stuff that you can like put little barrels on, but Storm Point, not really. It's a lot of water, a lot of grass, and those fences allow you to hold a lot of space, and they're
Mm.
harder to, shoot than Caustic barrels, for example. I think that's part of
Yeah,
it, but I also think the Newcastle Watson combo is just light years ahead of the Caustic Newcastle combo. Having that gen behind
I
the
certainly
energized
agree.
wall, nothing is getting through that. And if you want to, like I said on the Olympus thing, with Newcastle, you just need to find a little crevice in a cliff, in a rock, and you can just set up with a gen and a castle wall there, and you can live for a very long time. Live long enough that the team shooting you get shot by a different team. So it's little things like that, which is why I think Newcastle and Watson is one of the best defensive combos, in the game. I think if you're looking for a team comp, as Stallions played on Olympus, they were playing Watson, Newcastle, Gibby. You cannot kill a team that's in a corner like that if they're timing all their cooldowns properly. So I think that,
Mm.
it should be no surprise that Watson and Newcastle are getting played the most. It just makes
Certainly,
sense.
yeah.
Even in ranked, you know, like try and kill a Watson Newcastle team in a building on Storm Point. You just can't. So that's just that's my thoughts on the game. Yeah.
I very much agree, especially with because like a lot of the buildings on Storm Point have a lot of windows, which means you can kind of just shoot the caustic barrels a lot easier,
Yeah.
and because obviously they stand a lot taller. But with the Watson fences, the node is on the ground, so it's a lot harder to get to shoot the
And
node.
sorry, the other thing with that is
Hmm.
with the windows, like you can so easily throw a caustic ult into the windows. You can so easily throw arc stars into the windows.
Yeah,
When you have that gen set up, nothing like you set it up near a window, nothing can get through it. And now with
exactly.
the uh the blocked windows, is that what it's called? The energized windows now.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, they've like
Which,
blocked the windows now with like some purple thing. We haven't played the game in a while, so I don't know what they call it in game,
yeah,
but like setting up fences along there. Obviously, you can break through them if you melee them or shoot them, but I think I think Watson's just a no-brainer on Storm Point.
mm, I certainly agree. And the end game was quite intense with DKK also holding so much space in the end game there. They held the right side of the trenches and were able to secure second place, um, which was amazing to see. And yeah, I have not much more to say about game four. It was really entertaining. It is one of the games I do recommend you go watch for sure. It was very fun to watch. And I'll pass game five on to Toby.
Too easy. Before we discuss Game 5, I just wanted to talk about the POI draft for Storm Point.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk about Zach Major's team quickly, S2. They had the first round pick and they chose Lightning Rod. And they literally did nothing with that POI. I get there were no North zones, but Lightning Rod is the easiest POI to rotate from.
Mm.
Every single zone, unless it's a Zeus station zone, you are walking down the mountain. And I think Zach Mazer would be really disappointed with his team's performance. I think they finished 15th or 16th, and they didn't have a
Overall, let me
single good
quickly check.
game. And obviously,
Overall, they
second was
finished 16th
DKK.
place.
Yeah, so that's, you can't have the first round pick on one of the
Mm.
maps and not finish at least 12th, in my opinion. They should have had three okay games at the bare minimum. Instead, they had three. They had one okay game, which was game 5, I'm pretty sure. But I
No,
think
I
just
believe
really
game six.
disappointing from Zach Mazer. I think him and his team need to sit down and just really identify what the problem was there. Was it a fighting thing? Was it a IGLing problem? Was it a rotate problem? Was it a comp problem? You can't land Lightning Rod and just have three, mid games. So that's something he'll go back and look at. DKK obviously had the second round pick, chose Barometer, which was really surprising, seeing that I would probably say Mill would be the second
Mm.
round pick on Storm Point. So that's
I
really
would probably say
interesting.
so. Mill is quite
Yeah, and
good.
Medium Rare got that in the fourth pick. So that for me was really surprising. But I
I
think
do want to
DKK at
say
least
though,
reverted into points.
I do want to say though that Barometer is certainly still a good
Yeah.
pick because it's got plenty of loot for a full team, so you can be, quite well looted, quite a lot of meds, and with the overall size of the POI, there is a very high chance that there'll be at least two armor caches quite close. So I do see the pick in Barometer, and I do think it is a good pick overall, especially for DKK. I think they're definitely a team that could benefit a lot, and we did see them do quite well in the second half of these 6 games in
Well, that's
Storm
sort
Point.
of where I'm. Yeah, yeah, that's where I'm sort of getting at though, is that
Mm,
for a North Zone, the Lightning Rod team is the team you worry about. If you're letting it Zeus or Command
yeah,
Center, you're always keeping in mind that Lightning Rod team it should be stacked. We don't want to like fight them early. And that's the same
mm,
with the South Zone with that Barometer team. They've got the most
yeah,
loot density in that area. If you're a team rotating down to South for like a Barometer zone, or you're, a Sonode Cave team rotating to East, you're trying to avoid that Barometer team just because it's so dominant, which is why
yeah,
DKK chose that POI, I'm sure. And then obviously if we go west to, down Beast Mill, I'd say Mill is that dominant POI that, you don't want to fight the Mill team early because they should just be stacked. There's so many Prowler
yeah,
nests. There's just so much loot density. But then sort of the thing with Lightning Rod is you could argue Lightning Rod is the best POI, north and east.
yeah, for sure. I
I'm
would
looking at the
say
map
there's,
right now on the stream. There's nothing really below it.
I would
That Lightning Rod
say,
team should literally warlord that entire side of the map. So that's sort of where I'm
yeah,
getting at Zach
100%.
Mazer. So any zone there, he should be able to revert to a lot of points. KP, KP wise or platinum wise, it shouldn't really matter.
Mm,
Obviously, it's easy to sit here and say that, but that's just my sort of commentary. They just did not get a foothold in anything. We had that game five is the zone practically was the zip line building east of Cascade, which Lightning Rod has a little bit of priority to. They should be able to get a good spot in that zone if they rotate early with, they got tier loot, but they sort of ended up in that cluster near command center.
yeah,
And, that could have been because played they sort of went to checkpoint and, scanned the beacon and sort of salvaged that. Whereas I think that would have been better off just looting up Lightning Rod and then going straight into zone.
mm,
Obviously, these guys are the pros, they know better, but that's just my sort of commentary. I was just super disappointed in the way they played. Because we used to land in ranks like Zeus Station and Lightning Rod and stuff. And I feel like we sort of knew that we had better loot than all the other teams. And yeah, these are
yeah,
sort of Diamond Masters lobbies, but I think the same uh, logic applies. The loot pool doesn't change in ALGS. But yeah, moving on. Sorry, do you have any comments like what I'm talking about? Kind of just yapping.
no, I think you pretty much hit everything. I think that's good.
But yeah,
Move
no,
on to
like
game 5.
obviously Gibby was banned this game, so
Mm-hmm.
teams would just go to sort of the Newcastle Valk Watson comps. That was pretty universal, I'd say. There was a couple Sears, a couple Caustic Steel, a couple Catalysts. There was a Rampart, but overall, everyone was running that Watson Newcastle comp. And obviously, Medium Rare won this game, which is MT, Slayer, and Gents, which is a new team that formed. Shopify Rebellion
Mm-hmm.
had their redemption game. Honestly, they were kind of trolling for the first 4 games or whatever, but they, they finished second with a bit of KP.
Yeah,
Crazy
they
threes.
brought it back.
Another redemption game. They were kind of trolling a little bit, I'd probably say, especially having that like third round pick on Olympus, not doing anything with it, and then obviously
Yeah,
Thugget's just the king of consistency, and Full XCI, which sort of had their second best game of the day. This was a really funny zone. There were a lot of blue armor teams by the end, and sort of those purple armor teams really like they're just over outgunned. Crazy Thieves made it to the final zone, but unfortunately they rotated so early. They only had blue armors and gray
yeah,
mags. So a quick Costa cult and 3 guys looking at a blue armor team. They got deleted. Not much more I can really say about what happened in the zone. It was more just the purple armor teams with golden mags killed the blue armor teams with great mags. That was pretty much it. But yeah, any thoughts on the game, mate?
I certainly do think that Crazy Thieves did have a decent comeback there. I was quite excited to watch them play, and I'm glad they actually did get at least somewhat of a decent game in there. I did think they would perform a little better.
Yeah, I'm just recording. Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, Crazy Thieves, they landed Jurassic, so they did have priority of the zone with not a lot of loot, but I think it was a very
Hmm.
positive game. They played very patient. I think that's what Nice would have been looking for at this stage of
Yeah.
the competition. Yeah, I think we move on to game 6. I think we pretty much
Yep.
covered everything there. So
Game
obviously,
6, I do
Newcastle was
really.
banned, which is not a surprise. This was
Yes.
the south checkpoint zone, sort of pulls down into the low ground where those buildings are towards Mill. And NIP won this game. This was a very dominant performance. They had a
This
very good spot to begin with.
indeed,
Yeah,
I was quite excited to watch NIP perform in this checkpoint zone. They were playing the building at the bottom of the zip line in checkpoint, and the zone ended up pulling towards the lower buildings. And they did have a great rotate out, managing to pick up KP on the teams that were pushing in behind them. Second place, we did get Oblivion, which also performed quite well. In third place, we had Thuggets. As we've said, they have been quite consistent all day. And it was good to see. And I certainly enjoyed this match quite a lot. Let me just grab my notes here.
I think
So,
this was definitely the most entertaining game.
certainly, yeah.
There were so many teams that just had to sort of finish on a high that they all sort of came together and all just collapsed on each other. Like Team Liquid had a really good start to the game. They had a really nice rotate. They had a bit of KP,
Mm,
but they just had so many teams just playing perfect, zone play style, and eventually they literally got collapsed on with like Stallions. But
yeah.
NIP, that's why they played so well. They had a building in the middle of the zone, the zip line building that leads up to checkpoint, and they sort of knew when to exit that building because all the teams are going to rotate through it. And they sort of,
Mm.
when the zone was closing, they pushed out and held the outside of the building, with
Well,
Watson, for example. So
yeah,
it was so expertly played by Karev and Vane, who are the two IGLs.
100%. I
And
do want to quickly mention
yeah, you're right.
3 teams that did do really well. As you mentioned, Team Liquid, they had 12 points with 7 KP, which is very good, second highest in the lobby, I believe. We did have Crazy Thieves, I would say, they had an okay game, 9 points with 5 KP. It's pretty decent. They did come 5th. And then we had ROC that also did perform decently with 10 points and 7 KP, again with that. And the the legend picks I did see through this game was more Watson, Seer continuing to be picked, Caustic being picked a decent amount considering the Newcastle and Gibby bans. And we also had a handful of Bangalores, which I was very much happy to see. And I think it was quite good. I mean, we did have a good I do believe Stallions had a good position there in the end game, and I honestly thought they would have done a lot better. But they made a bit of an unfortunate push, underestimating the scenario, and they did lose a player due to it, eventually causing them to lose overall. And it was quite unfortunate for them to see. And yeah, I also want to mention if the games had continued, the ban would have been Sia. What do you think on all those legends and stuff
Well, I
throughout
think
that game?
I think it's interesting that Caustic wasn't even close to getting banned.
Yeah,
I think that's
I
really
do it
interesting that Seer was literally going to be banned for Caustic.
100%.
But yeah, I think that game was because we originally thought Oblivion was going to win. No, sorry, yeah, Oblivion was going to win that game. Monsoon's team, but it was sort of like the
Mm,
last game where they had rotated just extra early, and they actually found a really good spot. But again, they just have blue armors and white mags, and
yeah,
NIP had just cleaned up the entire side of their zone and had 100 boxes to loot, and it was just GG from there.
It was, yeah,
And those Skynades at the end,
good
Karev
cleanup.
hit. Go watch the watch party.
We
Like
do
Karev
have
hit like two
the
back-to-back Skynades, and it was just over from
indeed,
there. And NIP just won the day because of it.
yeah. And that was game six. Honestly, it was probably the most eventful game of the day. I would definitely recommend going and watching that if you have the chance. We do have the clip on our Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and Twitter of the victory fight. And obviously, the VOD is on YouTube as well as Twitch. And before we get to the outro, I do want to mention the statistics of the overall game. The number one team, obviously NIP, with 61 points and 28 kills overall. Second place was Oblivion at 50 points, so an 11-point game with 19 kills overall. And third place, which I'm quite happy to see, is Thuggets with 49 points and 17 kills overall. The number one player for kills was Karev. Second place was Scissor something. I don't know how to pronounce that. My
Sorcerer.
apologies. Sorcerer, there you go. He was second place with 12 kills. And Sykes, surprising, came in at third place with 11
That just
kills
shows how much
for the
liquid
day.
was just flying under the radar.
Yeah.
Like, none of those
It's
boys were
unfortunate,
streaming,
as I
but they were
said.
cooking.
Yeah, as I said, it's quite unfortunate that we didn't get to watch their gameplay. I also want to point out the top three team compositions were Gibraltar, Newcastle, Valkyrie at 13.33%. Number of picks was 16. Second place composition was Alta Costa Crypto at 11.67% at 14 picks. And third place was Newcastle Valkyrie Watson at 5.83% with 7 picks. That's a massive gap between third and second place, with the rest dropping from there. The top three legends was Caustic at 42.5%. Number of picks was 51. Newcastle was 35%. Number of picks 42. And third place legend for the day was Valkyrie, 34.17% at 41 total picks. And that's just some stats for the day. And I think overall, this was a pretty good set.
Oh, super fun, man. It was fun watching
Quite
it. It was
excited to
fun.
see what comes.
This episode was fun to do.
Indeed.
I think it's going to be a really fun season. Obviously, we've got these watch parties up until June, and then we got the real deal. But I think,
am quite excited to see that.
NIP are obviously first in the overall rankings. I think they're the team to beat. Obviously, it's only been 2 match days, and a lot can happen, but they're the team to beat right now. They're setting the benchmark. Oblivion are sort of continuing that champs form. Thuggets and Medium Rare, those are the two teams that are just missed the consistency. They're turning up, getting consistent top 10s. They're the teams, if you're a fan, you're never going to be disappointed, at least after these first 2 match days. And then obviously like Team Liquid and DKK, I think are 2 teams where one of those teams is very consistent and might not get the first, second, and thirds, but they're finishing 6th every game. Whereas DKK need to work on that consistency. Obviously, dropped in the past, has been known to always make finals and champs, just because he can always get his team into a winning position. Whether they finish 7th or whether they finish 1st, it doesn't really matter. But he just gets his team always there. But obviously, his team died at early multiple times. So that's something for him to really fix up over this next week. And then obviously Rock, who is an interesting team because you always feel like they're in fights and stuff like all game, right? But I don't know, they're more of a team we can't really make a comment on just because they're a bit up and down, a bit rocks and diamonds. And that's the same with CRT. But over the next couple of weeks, we'll give you guys commentary and we'll break those sort of teams down more. Obviously, it's been 2 match days, but for us, we've been keeping up with scrims for the last couple of months. So,
I
don't know. We'll see.
So we've got a bit of an idea on. With the scrims, it's been good to watch because we've come into this set with a little bit of an idea of what the players are up to, what the team compositions are like, what players to really look at, and what teams are are the ones to really look at. So we'll definitely keep keeping an eye on that, so that every time we do bring an ALGS watch party, we are bringing some of the most entertaining POVs. So we'll make sure to keep that up. We will be streaming the same time next Monday, I believe, right? Is the next block for us?
Sunday actually.
Sunday. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so we're
So we'll
streaming
be,
Australia Sunday morning. Here in America, just whenever the game times
yep.
are on.
So we'll be doing that. Clips and stuff that we capture throughout the stream. Go to our Instagram, YouTube,
Go
TikTok,
follow
etc.
those. Your team will win
So
the
go
next
follow
game.
those, check them out, and yeah, that's all I have really for the closing.
I mean, yeah, just the closing thoughts, if you guys are still here, is that, we really want to build a community here. So,
Yes.
if you're keen to join it, if you love ALGS, just be a part of it,
Mm.
engage with us, leave comments. We want to know what your opinions are. We want to improve. And we really want to build something. Like I said, our end goal is to like own a roster that competes in
Exactly.
ALGS. So, it's going to be a long journey, but, we want you guys to be a part of it. So,
Exactly.
little things like leaving likes, leaving comments, sharing. If you've got a friend that loves Apex, chuck in one of our reels. He may love us. He may not. Who cares? But,
But
come
yeah,
along
we'll
for the
just,
journey. This is not just about us. And that's sort of what I want to make it,
yeah.
our
I
messages.
I I very much agree, and I'll expand on it because we're making this short because we love Apex. We're really passionate about esports in general, and Apex in that esports category. But I would say that we're also building this community because there's not much of like substance here for like a community for the ALGS and stuff. There's not much for people to really sit down and watch. Like there's Nice Swig and his watch party, there's Greek in his watch party, and then they both do the B stream through major ALGS LAN events. But other than that, there's not really much news, not really much information. So we're building this community so that we can really enrich the topic and expand Apex Legends and hopefully reach new audiences as well as longtime fans. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap up this episode here. But yeah, make sure you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X, whatever it's called, Twitch, and obviously Spotify and Apple. We're on all the platforms. Just search up Conversion AU or Team Conversion, and we'll pop up. But yeah, anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you very much.